Peter, welcome to my show. I really appreciate your taking the time at the beginning of the year when it must be so busy to join me for it. Really a privilege to have you.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Peter, I know we've got a clock ticking, so let's get straight to it. There are lots of great questions to get into, but let's just start with the big picture. Please give us a brief background on service leadership, how it supports MSPs, and what's your role in it.
Sure. Service leadership was started 20 years ago by Paul Dippell. Paul is one of the industry icons. I think there's probably two or three folks that are most responsible for the MSP industry as we see it today, and that's worldwide. And Paul Dippell would definitely be one of those. And a big reason is he started the company 20 years ago after a long tenure in working with VARs and some businesses that today we would refer to as project shops or break fix. But Paul recognized that there was no source of objective financial industry data that was really useful from an apples to apples perspective. So he started service leadership as a source of truth in data for the industry. And 20 years ago, started to benchmark the IT industry worldwide. And today, we continue to benchmark the IT industry worldwide. We have the deepest and most comprehensive source of data on performance in the industry. And every quarter, partners from all over the world put their data into our system, and we run that data and we look at what drives success today. And we determine success based on the best in class. And for us, the best in class is the top 25% most profitable companies each quarter in 10 different business models. So we look at break down business models by revenue. And so, for example, if you have 60% or more of your revenue coming from recurring and non-recurring product, we're going to consider you product centric or a VAR. If you have 40% or more coming from services, we have 9 different service models that we look at. The largest being infrastructure managed service provider, but a lot of companies do some app dev, they do some infrastructure work. So we really want to know what that revenue distribution looks like so that we can compare app dev companies to other app dev companies and MSPs, infrastructure MSPs to other infrastructure MSPs, etc. But every quarter, those companies get a look at how do they compare in over 60 different KPIs to the best in class, and it's provided on it's on ASIO, on ConnectWise's ASIO platform. They're able to log in, see how they compared, get really granular breakdowns of how they did compared to not only themselves, but how they did compared to the best in class. So it's extraordinarily useful for not only an owner or a CEO or president, but also for you. There's different views you can have that show productivity of your service team. So you can have your VP of service log in and see how their service team compared to other best-in-class service teams, etc. Because we have 20 years of data and we run that every quarter, we have an unbelievable view as to what is driving success today in the industry. And so we continue to provide benchmarking. It's our largest number of partners that participate, but we also do 2 annual reports now. We do one on compensation that'll be coming out in about a month or month and a half. And then we do an annual profitability report, which is about a 350 to 400 page look at the industry top to bottom. And we publish that every year in late May or early June. The last thing we do is we have an online coaching tool that we launched about 11 years ago called Sleek, SLIQ. And Sleek is a online coaching tool that will assess your operational maturity level and tell you what you should be focusing on to get better financial results and better operational results. So we do all those things today. We were acquired in 2020, late 2020, early 2021 by ConnectWise. So we are a standalone business entity within ConnectWise. And my job is to run it. I led an MSP for 11 years. About 10 of those years, we benchmarked with service leadership, and it was instrumental in us turning the business around and growing the business and being acquired and doing acquisitions and all of those things. And so I'm a huge believer in the power of the platform because I was a customer on it for 10 years.
It's a great insight. It's a much needed thing for MSPs, and it's an amazing product, I think, for them. I don't know whether I should be asking this question, maybe, and you can just say no, but are you allowed to disclose, or do you disclose anywhere how many members you have right now in the MSP community? I don't know.
As a matter of policy, we don't disclose
do that,
sample
okay.
size, but I can tell you, just to give you some idea,
Yeah.
we benchmark 100% of the Evolve community and service leadership peer group community. That's about, altogether, that's about 550 companies worldwide. We benchmark another peer group community that I can't disclose publicly. That's a worldwide community. We benchmark several smaller regional peer group and coaching communities. And then we have a large group of partners, way larger than any of those, that just subscribes to service leadership for benchmarking and Sleek in the reports. They can buy those at a huge discount. They can subscribe to those on an annual basis through ConnectWise. And so peer groups are the best way to get involved with benchmarking and using Sleek. You're going to get a lot more guidance, and it's going to help your journey accelerate much faster. But you don't have to be in a peer group to benchmark. You can still do it as a standalone subscriber.
Okay, and the profile of the MSPs, again, high level, does it run the full range from like 5 people shops to big businesses, or is there a certain such thing?
Yeah, generally speaking, we're working on a small partner benchmarking platform right now. That a tool that will run on our same platform, but it'll be much less detailed on what it asks and also what it provides. And that's going to be really designed for the partner that I would say, generally speaking, is sub 1 million of revenue. Around 8 to 10 employees is when most partners become financially sophisticated enough to be able to enter the data into our system and really understand the results of what they're seeing and be able to put those into action. When you're smaller than that, it can be a bit overwhelming, and you may lack the financial sophistication to do it. There's no requirement. We do have partners who are 1, 2, 3 employee partners, but just generally speaking, it's around that 8 to 10 employees, about $1 million of revenue, where we start to see partners. But then from there, the sky's the limit. We have, I think we're benchmarking right now about $7 billion a quarter of revenue, something like that. We have partners now that are approaching $1 billion of revenue. We have MSPs now in our database and VARs that are in that size. We have some MSPs that are well over 100 million of EBITDA now. So the industry's really changed. What's really interesting in the data, we ran a slide in our annual report last year that showed by revenue size the differences in best in class and bottom quartile and median profitability distribution. And one of the really widely held myths that's not true is that bigger is better, and that if I'm $1 million MSP, I'm going to be more profitable when I get to 5 million or when I get to 10 million or whatever the size is. And it's generally speaking not accurate. And every size of revenue that we benchmark, we see partners, at least 22% of the partners are best in class, and at least 22 or 23% are bottom quartile. In some sizes, there's a little bit of adjustment to those numbers, but as a general rule, at every size, what drives success from a KPI standpoint works. It's the same principles of service delivery and go-to-market and staffing and gross margin, and all of those things, generally speaking, hold true across all size ranges.
That's a very interesting insight. And you know what? It's a little counterintuitive for me, because intuitively, I would have thought larger MSPs would have figured out more of the competencies required to be successful, like a sales and marketing competency, for example, right? And then that would have resulted in better margins or better growth. But you're saying that you don't see such a systematic pattern by size category, that it's sort of sprinkled across the various buckets. Am I hearing you correctly there?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So yeah, if I'm working with a $50 million revenue MSP, and I'm working with a $3 million revenue MSP, their go-to-market on sales and marketing is going to be very different. The larger MSP obviously is going to have a sales team. If they're running it right, they will have segmented that sales team into hunters and into farmers or account managers,
Mm-hmm.
and not be doing hybrid reps. They'll have sales
Mm-hmm.
management. They'll have probably in-house marketing, and they will have maybe a marketing team in-house. So I'll have all of those things if I'm a larger company. If I'm a smaller company, if I'm in that $2-3 million range, the owner will probably be spending about 50% of his or her time doing sales.
Mm-hmm.
They will not have, most likely have a sales rep. They may have a VCIO or an account manager role that they've added. But the owner is going to be sales manager and salesperson and sales engineer in
Right.
many cases. Um, but if they're accounting for their time that they spend correctly, and they're booking that to their sales expense, which they should be, to
Right.
their sales compensation costs, and they're booking their other marketing costs correctly, both companies should be operating in a similar range of spend, which is best in class today is about 14.2% of gross margin dollars should be going to sales and marketing.
Okay.
So if I'm a $50 million company, 14.2% of gross margin is a bigger number. But I still have to manage my team. I still have to make sure that my sales reps are productive, that they're producing the right amount of gross margin back to my business, that my marketing initiatives are productive. It's really easy for large companies to, because they've grown so much in size, to tolerate less productive salespeople or spending marketing on things that is not really working and driving the desired outcomes. Um, there's a lot more. There are a lot more rocks to hide under when you're in a larger business. If you're in a smaller business, you notice those things faster. So it, it's not that one model is right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're just different models at different sizes
Mm-hmm.
and maturity levels of the businesses.
Mm-hmm. Can you share some insights on what best in class looks like? I mean, I have here in my notes things like key metrics like margin, revenue growth, customer concentration, et cetera. Can you share some insights there with us?
Sure. Best in class service gross margin should be right around 50%. And one of the other big differences with service leadership data is all of the customers who benchmark with us worldwide are aligned to the same chart of accounts. So it's called the NSP COA, the Normalized Solution Provider Chart of Accounts. And that's important because I'll go to different events and I'll hear different companies talking about gross margin. And I'll hear companies talking about gross margin targets that are 75% or
Right.
these really high numbers.
Right.
Well, those gross margin targets are evaluating the inputs to gross margin differently than we are. So in our model, it not only includes all of your tools that you need to deliver your managed services, so your PSA and RMM tools and other tools that you need to deliver your whatever your managed service offering is currently, but it also includes all of the labor related to delivering that service. So it will include obviously your techs, that's the easy one, but it also will include your service managers. They should not be in your G&A expense, they should be in your service expense. It'll include your project managers, your project engineers. It will even include your VCIOs or post-sale account managers. They're not salespeople, they're service people because they are part of the service delivery to those customers. So when you really put all of those people and all of the cost related to that, you should be running at least 50% gross margin on your services overall. Now there will be some nuance to that. You'll have the best in class project service gross margin runs about 37.5%. Managed service gross margin runs a little over 50%, best in class. So there's some nuance there, but if you target 50%, you'll be in the ballpark as a managed service provider. As a VAR, it's about 44%. So
Okay.
VARs have to have a more expensive sales engineering team, and they have to have more expensive project engineers. They're going to make up for it in volume. The average VAR that we benchmark's about 10 times the size of the average MSP. So best-in-class performance for the average VAR today, or for a VAR today, is about 14%. For an MSP, it's at least 17% EBITDA. But if you're doing 14% of 10 times as much revenue, you're perfectly happy. You're doing just fine, right? So there are some differences there. We talked about sales and marketing, that you should be spending about 14.5% or so of gross margin dollars, not revenue, but gross margin dollars on sales and marketing. I'll see a lot of bigger companies that are way over that, and they'll chalk it up to, yes, but we need to add expense to grow. Well, our data says that the best-in-class, most profitable MSPs are not only the most profitable, they're growing the fastest. So, so you've got to keep an eye on the expense side of that too. But you also want to make sure you're investing enough. It's easy to invest too little in it as well.
Peter, can I just interrupt
Yep.
you 1 second, because a thought just came to my head. Do you collect data on whether people have their own sales and marketing versus whether they use external sales and marketing? Do you see any difference in performance if you see that data?
What are you defining as external sales and marketing?
Like somebody might use an external agency and say, you know what, I'm going to hire those 2 people to work offsite. They're part of your company, but I'm going to pay for their time to, do the marketing.
Okay. No, we've looked at that, but we look at it at the same from a financial performance standpoint. So if you hire, let's say, a marketing agency and you don't have in-house marketing, that cost goes into your marketing compensation spend, because if you didn't hire the agency, you'd be hiring a body, whether it's full-time or part-time.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any MSPs that are outsourcing sales. I don't think you really viably can do it. I do know of some that outsource sales management. There's some really capable sales management as a service companies out there, and that can be really handy for a small to mid-size MSP that is not at the size that justifies a full-time sales manager. Or in many cases, the owner of the MSP is more technical. They just don't know how to even transition into sales, so they hire somebody to help them do that. But again, that cost goes into compensation.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. So we talked about margin, we talked about gross profit. What about revenue growth? What's sort of best-in-class cutoff for revenue growth?
Well, it depends on whether you're talking about total revenue growth or managed service revenue growth. Total revenue growth, best in class, I think, has been running about 15% or so. The average, what we've been seeing on revenue growth that's significant, is over the last 6 quarters, we've been seeing revenue growth on managed services come down to earth. We saw a period of about 2 years starting in Q3 of 2020 and really running through mid to late 2023 of a huge spike in managed services organic revenue growth. And that was related to really 3 factors. One is there were a lot of new prospects. There were a lot of new logos that came onto MSPs because of work from home and hybrid work complexities. So a lot of companies that had not outsourced previously realized that, hey, this is a little bit different animal. I'm going to need to get some help on this. And so we saw a lot of healthy new customer logo growth. We also saw a really healthy economy with a lot of jobs being added. And if your customer is adding more jobs, they're adding more users, and most MSPs price on a per user basis. So they saw good growth there. The third source of really good revenue growth was not a great thing, and that was high inflation. Really high wage inflation for MSPs required MSPs to be doing annual increases for their clients of 8, 10, 12%, because they were having to pay those increases on wages to their team. And so it looks really good on paper to see that revenue pop, but in reality, there's a pretty nasty dark side that comes with that, because your cost of goods is going way up at an even faster rate. So, but anyway, in the last 4 to 6 quarters, we've seen managed service revenue growth returning back to that 10 to 12% range, which is more historically normal. It's really healthy. We think that's just a sign of future health of the business, and that that's where the business was for years and years prior to COVID. So we think that the days of that sugar high due to COVID are over. We're back to a normal business cycle.
Okay. I want to talk about operational maturity. Everybody talks about it slightly differently, but you really own the term, if I'm correct. What do you mean by operational maturity?
Yeah, we literally own the term.
Yeah.
Service Leadership trademarked the term operational maturity level in relation to technology service providers about 12 years ago. So every time somebody uses it with another company, they have to send me a check.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just kidding on that. They don't. But we do actually own the term. So when we talk about operational maturity level, we're really talking about on a scale of 1 to 5, how well run is the business? What's their ability to execute? What's their ability to implement a business plan? And so we don't just look at financial performance. We look at 5 and soon to be 6 different functional areas of the business: financial, sales, service, strategy, compensation, and we're going to be adding. I think I might have missed one, but we're going to be adding a security and compliance section soon. So when somebody's starting a business, they're OML 1. They're just getting a business going. They're just they're in startup mode, just trying to hustle. And so if they're successful in that, typically they're having to make a lot of concessions to customers. They're probably bringing on a lot of different tech stacks. They're going to be much less discerning in terms of a new customer, because they need the revenue. Without revenue, you don't have a business. So you go out and you bring in a bunch of customers, and you wake up one day and you have to support all those customers. You probably along the way added a couple of employees to help you. And so now you're OML 2, which is a really difficult place to operate. Typically, your systems don't function well together. You're running an inefficient organization. You're not as process focused as you should be. So at OML 2, the goal is get out of OML 2 into OML 3 as fast as possible. If you can do that, life will start getting better. Your MSP will start probably making some money at that point. And when you get to about OML 4, you're running best-in-class profitability, most likely. You're in a much better position to do acquisitions and successfully integrate them. And so the goal is you can't skip levels. You've got to go through the progression. The goal is, though, to go through it as fast as possible. So what Sleek does is it'll assess your operational maturity level. It'll ask you about 150 questions or so about how you're doing things today. So for example, how are you doing assessments? Who's conducting the assessments for the customer? Are they being conducted prior to you quoting managed services? Are you charging for pre-sales assessments, et cetera? So it'll ask you all those questions about how you're doing assessments, for example, and then it'll tell you what's your OML in that trait. What's really cool is when you get done, not only does it tell you your OML, but it'll give you a prioritized action plan that will tell you what should you be working on first to get the best results. And it'll provide you, there's dozens, if not hundreds of webinars, white papers, there's HTML and Excel-based tools, all of which are provided in the traits that'll help you really understand, what do I need to do to put this into action in my business? So you can then go in and reassess yourself and update your OML as you improve, and it'll give you a new list of stuff to work on. So it's just like if you hire a coach, and that coach is coming in and assessing your business and then coming back every 90 days to see how you're doing and tell you how to get better.
Is the Sleek assessment a subscription-based service, or people can do it on a one-off basis?
It's subscription based, and it's really important that it be an iterative process. You want to go in, you do your assessment, and the first time it's going to take you. You're going to have your whole management team sitting around the table. You go through and you answer all the questions. It's about a 4 to 6 hour exercise.
Mhm.
It takes a while to really read through the questions and the answers and do it right. So when you come out of that exercise, now you know where you are. But now the really important work begins, because then you're going to be going into Sleek to learn how to improve. And so our advice to MSPs is focus on 2 to 4 traits a quarter. Don't try to boil the ocean.
Mhm.
Don't try to go in and do 30 of them right out of the gate, which is tempting, by the way. You go through the assessment and you realize all these things that need to be fixed. And so you want to fix them all as fast as possible. But our guidance to any business is focus on 2 to 4 things every 90 days and really implement them in your business in a very qualitative way, get them up and running. And then you go back in and update your assessment in those traits, and it'll give you an updated OML, and it'll give you an updated action plan, and then do 2 to 4 next quarter, right? And
Mhm.
if you do that every quarter, by the end of the year, you'll have fundamentally improved 8 to 16 things within your business. That's a lot
Mhm.
of change in 12 months.
Are there certain factors or metrics that are more important or carry more weight, if you will, when the operational maturity assessment is being made?
Well, all of our traits, there's 40 different traits in there today. We're adding 6 traits with security and compliance. So there will be about 45, 46 traits. Every trait has a weight that's assigned to it. And so we look at 7 different ROI characteristics. So we look at how expensive is a trait to implement, for example. If you have 2 traits and you scored the same in both, but one of them is really inexpensive to implement and you can do it much faster, Sleek's going to tell you to focus on that one
Sure.
first. And so if one of them lowers your risk more than the other one, Sleek will tell you to focus on that. So it's going to look at 7 different things to
Okay.
determine the weighting of each trait.
Slightly different question. I've always wondered about location of an MSP and how important it is, when it comes to not so much operational maturity, but just the prospects for growing their business. Some parts of the country might be growing faster than others, right? Or might be cheaper than others to hire people. Do you see that in the data? Do you track it at all? Do you have a sense of intuition for
We do. We look at it a lot. It's interesting. It's just like the argument we hear about size of MSP.
that? Yeah.
We frequently will hear from the MSPs based in metro areas that, well, it's harder for me to be best in class because there's so much competition and wages are higher here. And then I'll hear from the guys out in the rural areas, well, it's really hard for me to be best in class because there's less prospects in my market. Um, and so this is why we encourage MSPs and why we focus so much on gross margin as opposed to top line revenue dollars,
Right.
because both of those factors adjust for each other.
Right.
So yeah, if I'm in a rural area, I'm going to have less access to talent, but the talent I'm going to be able to hire, I'm going to be able to hire at a lower cost, and I'm going to have less competition than I'm going to have in a major metro area. So what is that going to translate to? Well, it's probably going to translate to lower cost of goods on my wages, but it's also probably going to translate to slightly lower pricing on my managed services.
Mhm.
If I'm in a major metro area, I'm going to have a lot more talent in that market, but I'm going to have a lot more competition for that talent, both MSPs and enterprise companies. And I'm also going to have a lot more competition there's going to be more prospects, but there's also going to be more competition for them.
Mhm.
So I'm going to have to pay more for my people. But probably in those markets, the cost of managed services is going to be higher for quality managed services. So all of it, either way, should come out in the wash. The
Mm.
gross margin should be about the same. Best in class gross margin will be about the same. The productivity ratios for those service teams will be about the same. And the KPI we use for that, that's the most important, is your service multiple of wages. It looks at the relationship between service dollars coming into the organization and total wages going out for your service team. That's, if you're asking about one KPI, that's the most important KPI for an MSP. You have to, best in class today is running about a 2.9. So for every dollar of service revenue they're bringing in, or I'm sorry, for every dollar of service wages they're spending, they're bringing in about $2.9 of service revenue. Okay. So bottom quartile is bringing in about 1.9 or lower. And so that tells us a lot of things about pricing and efficiency and other things that they should look at.
Yeah. In all of this, is there an assessment of the quality of the management that's running the show?
Well, I think the OML does a great job of assessing that. It's going to, the operational maturity level of the business is going to really speak to two things. One is, what's the leadership's knowledge of what good looks like and what they should be doing? But the other thing it's going to measure is, what's their ability to implement change, right? It's one thing to go to a conference and hear about all this stuff and go back with the best of intentions, but only a more capable leadership team is going to be capable of implementing the change necessary to improve their OML.
What advice would you give to MSPs looking to scale their business efficiently?
I would tell them a few things. Number one is, acquisitions are not magic. If you need to fix your business first before you go out and start doing M&A. There's a lot of MSPs. Obviously, the market has been frothy with M&A since late 2020. We're working on our multiples right now, and our preliminary view, I just got off a call, our preliminary view of multiples for the end of 24 is that they're up a little bit from 23, which is a sign that M&A is still really healthy in the industry. We think 25 is going to be a great year for M&A again in the industry. So because of all this talk about M&A, a lot of MSPs believe, for me to grow, I need to go out and do M&A. That's the way. And there's also a mistaken belief that if I buy the right MSP, it will fix the issues that I have in my business. In reality, it will do the opposite. If I have issues in my MSP today, if I buy another MSP, it will shine a light on those issues in my business. Acquisitions are tough, integrations are tough. And so if you have a lower OML MSP and you go out and do an acquisition, you're going to throw away a bunch of money on that acquisition because it's going to expose the issues in your business, and the one that you bought is probably going to struggle when you try to integrate them. So my number one advice to MSPs is, get your house in order before you really focus on growth. Make sure that you've got your service delivery is where it should be. Make sure you understand your target customer profile and you're disciplined on who you're going out to get. If you're going to add salespeople, make sure you know what you're doing. And if you don't understand sales, and frankly, most MSP owners of smaller MSPs particularly don't understand sales. It's not the world that they've come from. They've come from a technical world. If you don't, there's great resources out there that you can hire to get some help with that. So get help. But make sure that your service engine, your service factory, as we often refer to it, is running right, that you've got the right people in that, and that you've got a good product that you can go out and sell. Second thing that I would advise is, make sure you're charging enough. Most of the lower OML MSPs are significantly undercharging what they should be charging for both managed services and for project labor rates. So you need to make sure that you are charging enough for the services that you're doing. You're working too hard to not make any money. And currently, about 16 to 18% of MSPs are unprofitable. About another 10 to 12% of MSPs are barely making any money. So, and when I look at why, frequently it's because they're just not charging enough for equivalent services. So make sure you've got your pricing in order, and then go out and start trying to accelerate growth. So make sure the foundation of your house is really well set before you go to add a second and third story onto your house.
Yeah. You should run your business as if you're going to be selling it, or may need to sell it in an emergency. You agree or disagree with that philosophy?
I couldn't agree with that more. The things that are going to be looked at when you go to sell your business, all of those things are going to make your life way better without selling the business. So for example, you're going to get a premium in your business if you're running a more profitable MSP. If you're generating a higher percentage of EBITDA output and your size of organization, your size of EBITDA output is higher, you're going to get paid a higher multiple. Well, that's great. But you're also going to be making more money along the way, and it's going to give you more money to save for a rainy day and invest in your business and all those good things that come with making more money. Mm-hmm. If you're setting your customers up on contracts that automatically increase, and you're doing things to build a more efficient service factory, to deliver higher quality that is reflective in higher customer retention rates and higher employee retention rates. Those are things that oftentimes are going to factor in evaluation. They're also going to be really important when you're owning the company and operating the company. So definitely you want to understand when you go to sell, what are the things that are going to maximize, what's going to maximize your selling price, but B, what are the things that the buyer is going to look for in due diligence? Another example is customer concentration. If you go out to sell, and generally speaking, everybody has some different math on it, but generally speaking, you'll hear if any one customer constitutes 10% or more of your revenue, or if any 5 customers constitute 20% or more of your revenue, there's going to be customer concentration risks. Now, some might say 5 customers constituting 30% of revenue, right, etc. But the point is the same, right? If you are too reliant on a single customer, and I'll see this with smaller MSPs, they'll maybe have one customer who constitutes 30 or 40% of their revenue. Well, that's not great. What happens if that customer leaves you? And all of a sudden you have all the cost of your business that you built to support that customer, but you don't have the revenue. So building your business in a way that a buyer is going to look at it and go, wow, this is a really well-run business that constitutes low risk for me if I buy it, and is likely to consider to continue growing, and is one I should consider. If a buyer would view you that way, your life along the way will probably be much less stressful and much more fun running your MSP. So yeah, understand what a buyer is looking for, and make it a focus strategically for you to build your business in that way. Someday you will transition your business. Arlen Sonelson, who founded the Evolve peer group community and is still around with us today, in those communities, and has a heavy role in M&A, leads the IT Nation Grow events where we focus on M&A. Arlen has a saying that I love, and that is 100% of owners will transition their business. It's whether they do it by their choosing or it's chosen for them. So whether you sell and do it in a planned way and do it at the right time, or whether something happens to you and your business needs to transition, whatever, ultimately your business will transition. So make sure it's ready for it. And like I said, doesn't mean you have to sell it. While you own it, life will be a whole lot better.
Yeah. How common do you think it is for MSPs at this point to be using some form of offshoring or nearshoring as a way to, economize their margins?
I think it's pretty rare still. There's certainly some larger MSPs who have the ability to have their own people, their own leadership, etc. We know of one that has a very successful help desk operation in Mexico. I know of many that are in the Philippines and in India. But you do need to have local leadership on the ground, and you need to be willing and able to invest the time to help really lead that local leadership and make sure it's not something. I think there's a misnomer that I can just hire 6 help desk employees and it'll be equivalent to 6 help desk employees in my office. It won't. You're going to need a lot more management and a lot more structure, and there's certainly some advantages. There's huge cost advantages, but you do need to know what you're doing to go in and be successful at it. One way you can do that is you can work with companies like ConnectWise or like IT by Design. There's other companies that do have an offshore or nearshore presence and have leadership, and you can hire them on a fractional basis to help you do that. So smaller MSPs, if they're offshore or nearshore, that's the model that I typically see.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's squarely what my sense for this is as well. Just big picture stuff, looking out into the future. Any risk that you see in the horizon that is not being discussed enough in our circles that could come back to bite us?
Yeah, the number one thing I hear about in terms of risk is the risk that true AI will bring to the space. I don't think it brings risk, certainly not in the near term. And by near term, I mean 3 to 5 years. I think if anything, it brings some tremendous opportunity for MSPs, and specifically in 2 ways. Number one is most of the AI or hyper automation, as we refer to it at ConnectWise, most of the hyper automation opportunity is going to revolve around automation of level 1 tech work. So if you really embrace it over the next few years, you should be able to significantly scale the number of level 1s you need in your operation and be able to make them much more efficient. Ultimately, it'll work into project management and helping project managers be more efficient. Level 2s will see some efficiency gains. Certainly, sales and marketing has already seen some efficiency gains from it. So the opportunity in the near term is really to bolster gross margin. And so you should be able to grow your business without growing your FTE counts to the same proportion that you've historically had to. And so that's one opportunity. The second is anytime there's a significant technology wave like we're seeing right now, it means that your customers need help too. So businesses out there are trying to also figure out how do they implement this to get savings in their business and bolster their efficiency and really help make them more competitive in their space. And so they're going to get that help from somebody. They should be getting that help from their MSP. So the job of an MSP today is radically different than it was 5 or 10 years ago, certainly radically different than it was when I got into the business in 2010, when you were setting up SBS servers for businesses on site, and your job, if there was an issue, was to get a body to their office as quickly as you could to fix it. We went through a huge wave of change with RMM products over the last 15 years or so that radically changed the model. I can be an MSP now to any business worldwide. I couldn't do that 15 years ago. I couldn't even, oftentimes they had to be within an hour or 2 of my office. So the business has changed significantly. It changed significantly with cloud, particularly with 365 support. It has changed significantly since COVID. It has changed significantly with security and the needs that robust cybersecurity has presented. It's changing again with AI. So all of these change waves have presented more opportunities for MSPs and more of a need for MSPs by the business community. We think that'll continue. I don't think there's any reason why that won't be the same in this case.
I completely agree. And I wonder whether in the year that lies ahead of us, buyers of such businesses will begin to bring that into account when they give valuations for companies who have both a consulting offering as well as a managed service offering, because they're providing that advisory role to their clients or setting themselves up for at least to be able to do that. Peter, thank you.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. Peter, thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate your getting on my show.
Sure, it was my pleasure, Matter. We could use another hour, I think, to cover.
I literally skipped the questions that I wanted to ask maybe for another time. But I really do appreciate.
Well, I'm happy to come on. Let me know when you want me to come on again, and we'll
do it again.
Make it an encore.
Very, very kind of you to say. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.